Coming up in today's newscast, the Labor and Hatnua parties dip in the polls after the Zionist union dissolves. President Donald Trump says that Iran can do as it pleases in Syria, and Israeli supermodel Bar Refaeli is reportedly indicted for tax offenses.
First two polls publicized following the dismantling of the Zionist Union, it was found that both the Hatnua and Labor parties were greatly damaged by the move. The two polls published by Kan and Channel 2 News found that if elections were held today, Avi Gabai's Labor Party would only win 7 and 8 seats respectively, down from 9 seats in previous polls, and Livni's Hatnua party on its own would receive just 5 seats according to Channel 2, and none according to Kan, as it failed to pass the electoral threshold of 3.25%.
Both polls showed that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party continues to maintain a significant lead, however, with 31 seats according to Channel 2 and 28 according to Kan. Then, similar to previous polls, coming in far behind, the next largest faction was former IDF Chief of Staff Benny Gantz's new party, Israel Resilience, which according to Channel 2 would receive 12 seats, down from 14 last week. Though according to Kan, he still holds on to the 14 mandates. With this in mind, both Gabai and Livni have reportedly sought an alliance with Gantz, though Livni did swipe at Gantz's failure to make his policies known. Meanwhile, parties across the aisle are also reportedly seeking alliances ahead of elections. Kan reported on Wednesday that the Prime Minister's Likud party may look to form a political union with Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon's Kulanu party, adding an estimated 6 seats to the Likud's roughly 30. Kulanu has denied these reports as rumors, though. Religious parties, United Torah Judaism and Shas, on the other hand, who are expected to receive 7 and 5 seats respectively, have confirmed that they are considering a partnership. Other remaining parties, most of which are also looking around for any partnerships they might find, include Yair Lapid's Yesh Atid party that slid in the polls down to around 13 or fewer seats, the New Right party started by Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked, which is down to 9 or fewer seats, and the former Defense Minister Ya'alon's New Telem party, which at the moment is expected to fail to meet the minimum required threshold completely.
Just a day after vowing that it's his duty to report his recommendations on the Netanyahu investigations ahead of April elections, Channel 10 News reported that Attorney General Mandelblit will likely announce his conclusions in as early as February. Prime Minister Netanyahu has consistently denied any wrongdoing regarding the allegations against him, and both he and his supporters have often charged that it would be undemocratic for Mandelblit to announce his recommendations ahead of elections. But the Attorney General has said that he felt it was his duty to give his opinion as soon as possible. And as for police investigators and the state prosecutors under Mandelblit, they've all issued their unsolicited recommendations to indict the Prime Minister in all 3 probes against him, cases 1000, 2000, and 4000. But only Mandelblit will have final say on whether or not to go forward with charges. Cases 1, 2, and 4000 all deal with allegations of corruption between charges of graft, bribery, illegal quid pro quo agreements, and more. Netanyahu, who denies the charges, as I said before, however, maintains that there will be nothing found against him and that therefore any attempts to indict would be an attempt at derailing a fair campaign. Thus, he also maintains that regardless of the indictments, he will not step down as prime minister before his term is up. In a startling statement, speaking at a cabinet meeting at the White House with senior state officials and reporters, United States President Donald Trump said on Wednesday that Iran is pulling people out of Syria, but they can frankly do whatever they want there.
Discussing the planned U.S. troop withdrawal from the country and its ramifications in the region, the United States president then explained that Syria had been, quote, lost long ago, end quote, due to the failed policies of his predecessor, President Barack Obama. Though he added, quote, we're not talking about vast wealth, we're talking about sand and death, end quote. Then, despite first announcing 30 days and then 4 months, Trump would not give a concrete answer when questioned about the timetable for the withdrawal of some 2,000 troops stationed in the country.
Yeah, I never said fast or slow.
What's your timetable? When do you want troops to be out?
I know somebody said 4 months, but I didn't say that either. I'm getting out. We're getting out of Syria. Look, we don't want Syria. Obama gave up Syria years ago when he didn't violate the red line. I did when I shot 59 missiles in, but that was a long time later. And when President Obama decided not to violate his statement that never crossed the red line, and then they did, and he didn't do anything about it. You know, making a threat is okay, but you always have to follow through with the threat. If you're going to make that threat, you can't make a threat and then do nothing. So Syria was lost long ago. It was lost long ago. And besides that, we're talking about sand and death. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about, vast wealth. We're talking about sand and death.
Later, Trump went on to say that he doesn't want to be in Syria forever, but nevertheless wants to protect the Kurds, America's greatest allies in its fight against ISIS. The United States president's comments came just a day after Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, when he reassured him that the United States would continue to cooperate and coordinate with Israel regarding the troop withdrawal and other regional issues, mainly Iran.
Joining us now with more via Skype on President Trump's comments regarding Syria is Middle East expert from the Begin Sadat Center at Bar Refaeli University, Dr. Mona Hikida. Dr. Hikida, thank you so much for joining us again.
My pleasure.
All right, so let's just kind of take a more global look first. What does Trump's announcements regarding Syria and Iran being able to do as they please in Syria have to do with Israel? What does that mean for Israel, more specifically?
Well, apparently, President Trump knows some things which we, the ordinary people, do not know. Apparently, he knows that the Iranian regime is on the verge of the collapse. And there is a sign. Today, the newscast was about the Minister of Health in Iran who resigned because he doesn't have any resources to provide normal medical care for his citizens. So he resigned. It means that the health system in Iran is collapsing. And apparently, President Trump knows about the situation. So for him, Iran can take Syria, but it won't do anything because in a couple of weeks maybe, or maybe some months, Iran will be totally collapsed. So this apparently what I hear from what he said.
Okay, but first of all, assuming that even if Iran were to collapse in the near future, it wouldn't say a scared animal, you could say, or like a cornered kind of country like this on the verge of collapse, couldn't Iran actually be more dangerous in this situation if they were unhindered? And also, Iran's not the only player in Syria. So without the United States' presence, could a vacuum be created in which ISIS or the likes of ISIS or another terror regime like Iran might erupt?
Well, these are two different questions. One question about Iran, I think that if things come really to a collapse, the Ayatollahs will run away in order to save, everyone will want to save himself. And they will run away in order to save, everyone will save his own neck. And this is what's going to be there in Iran. This is one thing. And that's why we are not afraid of Iran behaves in an unexpected way, only because it is on the verge of the collapse. What will happen is that Iran will, I think, the regime will run away, and a new power can come up, maybe from people who live today in exile. This is what I think will be in Iran.
What is Israel's response and really the region's response to this announcement within the security agencies and really within the governments themselves?
Well, I think that these things will be set between the bureaus of Netanyahu and Trump. This is nothing which you deal with in the media.
I see. Okay, so you don't think that there's any sort of situation, you don't think that this is indicative at all that perhaps Israel is being abandoned to a larger degree than what the rhetoric in the United States would suggest? Because the United States has suggested that Israel's security is paramount, but leaving and pulling out and allowing Iran to do what they please, that doesn't sound like those two things make sense together.
Look, they in the last weeks they are actually taking their soldiers out of Syria, and this is what Trump knows. So if Iran pulls out from Syria, why should he be in Syria? And this might be also the reason why he decided to withdraw from Syria. And there are pieces of information which we, the ordinary people, do not know, and this is why I think I trust Trump in this point totally. He might know many things which we do not, and make his decisions and announcements upon those parts of information.
All right. Dr. Hikida, thank you so much, as always, for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Now, speaking of the United States, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, has finally left her post this week after first announcing her intent to resign in early October 2018. President Trump reportedly looks to replace Haley with Heather Nauert, a State Department spokesperson and a former Fox News journalist.
But while Haley is stepping down from the international position, it's unlikely she'll be gone from politics and diplomacy forever. She's stated in the past that she'll remain a voice for the Republican Party and that she'll voice her opinions from time to time. Then on Twitter, she ended her term stating, quote, "I feel so blessed to have had the opportunity to rep the country I love so much, and thank you, Mr. President, for the honor of a lifetime," end quote. She followed that with congratulating Brazilian President Bolsonaro on his inauguration, and then taking a jab at UNESCO, which she describes as a cesspool and, quote, "among the most corrupt and politically biased UN agencies." As for her first acts as a civilian, however, they were a bit less political. First was a reboot of her Twitter handle, having to earn back many of her 1.7 million followers, and then apparently downloading Uber.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's historic visit to Brazil has officially come to an end, but we're still going to be talking about the outcomes here in Israel for quite some time. And ILTV's Latin American correspondent, Joy Gavijon, is here to help us sum up the most important events from this trip, and also to give us an update on Jair Bolsonaro's first days in office. So, Joy, take it away.
Thanks, Aaron. So there's definitely a lot to talk about here, but before we get into the outcomes from Netanyahu's visit, let's talk a little bit about Bolsonaro's first day.
Okay, yeah. We should know, what Israel's new best friend is up to.
Yes, so after taking office during his first day, Bolsonaro started by raising the workers' minimum wage only for 44 reales, which is almost $12. Oh. But this is not a decision people are happy with, because after doing the equation that takes in count the inflation, the numbers is still lower than what the former government calculated for 2019.
I see. And what about for other things like the LGBTQ community?
Well, yes, that's a good question, because following through with his promises, Bolsonaro, who is a right-wing leader and that was criticized because of his homophobic and racist comments, removed the LGBTQ community's concerns from consideration by the Human Rights Ministry. Also, the new education minister and former army commander Ricardo Vélez Rodriguez announced that he will dissolve an agency within the ministry that was created by the former president Lula da Silva to promote diversity in the education system.
Well, that's very concerning.
Yes, it is. And something else that is concerning is that one of the orders issued by the new government gave the Ministry of Agriculture the power to identify, delimit, and create new indigenous territories. And this is something that until now was in the hands of the National Indian Foundation, that worked with the Justice Ministry and works to address issues like healthcare, housing, and language preservation for these communities. So it'll change a little bit now.
So, and this is something that during his campaign he also promised, or that he promised that he wouldn't do?
He promised that he wouldn't do this.
I see. All right, so now that we went over Bolsonaro's first moves, then let's talk a little bit about Netanyahu's visit and this friendship with Israel.
Okay, yes. So we've been reporting that things were very well for the Prime Minister. He met with Bolsonaro and advanced in agreements in many areas. He also met with the U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, to talk about the situation in Syria. Also met with the President of Chile, with whom he started talks about possible direct flights from Santiago to Israel.
And let's not forget about the meeting with the Honduran president that led to the
Exactly.
big announcement of the embassy move. Also promoted by the United States.
Right, yes. Let's say that Netanyahu came back to Israel with the promise of 2 embassy moves, which is big news. And on top of that, many important agreements or talks for cooperation that intend to increase the ties with the Latin countries.
Also, he was very, very warmly welcomed by the Brazilian people.
He was. Also that, the people in Brazil showed a lot of support and love for Israel and for the Prime Minister. So I'm sure that we're going to hear about this a little bit more. And actually, Netanyahu invited Bolsonaro to come to Israel, and it looks like he agreed, but we just don't know when.
All right, well, it looks like we have a lot more to look forward to and to watch out for.
Yes.
Thanks for the update, Joy.
Of course, Aaron.
Israeli security forces early Thursday morning clashed with hundreds of settlers, mostly teens, in the evacuation of 2 mobile homes that were illegally erected last month on the former West Bank hilltop of Omona. And according to Israeli border police, by the end of the 3-hour evacuation, 23 police officers were injured and taken to the hospital for treatment.
Officers arrived on the scene in the early morning hours in order to carry out orders from the Jerusalem District Court that the structures should be evacuated. The police said that they were met with severe violence from settlers, however, who threw stones, burned tires, and in one incident, stabbed an officer with a sharp object. Well, the police said 7 suspects were arrested so far for violence against officers, and a spokesman for Hanenu, a legal aid organization that represents right-wing activists upon arrest, said that so far 5 of those suspects already have legal representation. The organization also said that it had received reports of excessive use of force by police officers, which landed several teens in the hospital. On the left, Yesh Atid leader Yair Lapid said we can't let the rule of law crumble just because it's convenient for some politicians, while Labor leader Avi Gabay simply called the violence unbearable, adding that Israel's citizens deserve a government that does not succumb to the violence of a handful of extremists. On the right, though, Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked, leaders of the new right party, also criticized Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, calling on him to evacuate illegal Arab structures in Khan al-Amar, too. They then accused the government of selective enforcement against only Jews in Omona. Well, the Omona outpost was first evacuated in 2017 amidst major clashes between Israeli security forces and settlers, following a High Court of Justice ruling that some 42 families were living on land that was owned by Palestinians. And it was this, and not capitulation, that led to today's removals.
At a press conference Wednesday with Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan, Erdan announced that as of now, Israel will work to make prison conditions for terrorists as strict and unpleasant as possible, while still maintaining the bare minimum conditions required by international law. Erdan established a committee in the summer 7 months ago in order to find ways of making prison harsher for terrorists, and Erdan explained that when it comes to security prisoners, one of the main goals of imprisonment, which is rehabilitation, doesn't exist, because such prisoners are infused with a terrorist ideology and do not regret their actions. Further, he also said that making the terrorists' condition worse is necessary both to create deterrence and to fulfill our moral duty to terror victims and their families. He added that we will not be deterred by threats and hunger strikes either. Finally, according to the new policy, among other restrictions, water consumption will likely be limited, as prisoners often leave the faucets on in protest, wasting up to 5 times more water per day than the average Israeli. Prisoners from PA President Abbas's Fatah party and the terror group Hamas in Gaza will no longer be separated into different wings for their protection. And then cooking privileges often afforded to security prisoners as well as visitation rights will also probably be revoked. Quote, "The party is over," Erdan said. Well, now, only time will tell if these new measures will effectively become a means of deterrent, as Erdan suggests, or not. There's major controversy at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem this week as a lecturer at the institution, Dr. Kerla Hilfrich, was caught on video criticizing a female student in active IDF duty who arrived for class wearing her army uniform. And according to the footage, which was aired first by the Khan News Network, it was after a verbal altercation between the soldier and another Arab student in the class who was offended by her attire that Hilfrich berated the student.
But rather than stand up for the student's right to wear the nation's uniform, Hilfrich approached the student after class and said you can't be naive enough to ask to be treated as a civilian while you're in uniform, adding that you're a soldier in the army and people will treat you accordingly. The student reportedly replied, asking, "Does it bother you that I'm wearing my uniform in class?" To which Hilfrich said, "For some people, civil society is as important to them as the army is to you, and you must accept their priorities with tolerance just as they accept yours." Though it doesn't seem like any tolerance of the choice to wear her fatigues were actually offered. Well, following the incident, right-wing NGO Im Tirtzu held a protest on the university campus, calling on the Hebrew University to issue an apology to the female soldier and to all the soldiers serving in the IDF. They also demanded the school fire the lecturer, and the student union also criticized the incident, saying it was shameful that students are humiliated because of their uniforms. In response, the Hebrew University issued a formal apology and said that the Hebrew University respects all its students, including those who attend class during their military service, whether during compulsory service or professional army personnel or as reservists. The university added that the board of the Hebrew University condemns disrespectful conduct between students and between faculty and students. And the university and the lecturer apologized to the student who felt offended.
Moving on, Israeli supermodel Bar Refaeli is set to be charged with crimes of tax evasion after Israel's state prosecutor's office informed Refaeli today that she will be indicted for trying to hide around 23 million shekels, or around $6 million in income, between 2009 and 2012. Refaeli's parents, Rafi and Tzipi, were also reportedly told that they would be indicted on separate charges of money laundering. News of the investigation broke out in 2015 when Refaeli was summoned in for questioning by the tax authority for allegedly failing to report celebrity discounts, accounting to some 1 million shekels, or around $250,000. However, the tax authority investigation was far more reaching, reportedly including charges dating back all the way to 2006. So now the supermodel is reportedly suspected of filing falsified tax reports stating that she lived abroad. Therefore, she allegedly did not include income from her work outside of the country. Simultaneously, she reportedly told tax officials in the United States that she was a resident of Israel, and in Israel said that she was a resident of the United States. Then she also is said to have concealed another 6 million shekels between 2006 and 2007 during the period of time she was dating actor Leonardo DiCaprio and claimed to be living with him. Mona Hikida, as well as her parents, will have the right to a hearing and to provide their versions of events before the state prosecutor decides to officially file an indictment. Finally, amidst their biannual migration, starlings from Russia and Eastern Europe are again gracing the Israeli skies with gorgeous movements and shapes.
According to Reuters, Tel Aviv University ornithologist Yossi Leshem explains that the large morphing groups of birds, or murmurations, are to both find safety in numbers and also to confuse potential predators. Well, thankfully, Israel, being placed specially between Europe and Africa and Asia, is a perfect place for bird watchers to see these murmurations, as thousands of species migrate across the Israeli skies each year. Meanwhile, speaking of natural magic, a rare pod of dolphins called false killer whales were spotted Wednesday off the coast of Eilat heading south towards Egypt. The pod had at least 10 individuals, but the highly sociable species has been noted to group together into pods as large as 500, and even including other species of dolphin. Sociability aside, however, the false killer whales gained their name not for how they look, but how they're known to attack other dolphins, like real killer whales or orcas are known to do. Their looks are much more akin to what you would expect a dolphin to look like, though, with a dark gray coloring, average body length of nearly 5 meters or 16 feet, and a tapered head with 44 conical teeth. Many other species of dolphins are also known to frequent Israeli coasts.
And now this week's Top 5 with ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh.
Holiday season is always my favorite. You get to gift your family and your friends with things they've wanted all year and surprise them with a few little things you know they'll just love. So I'm here to share with you ILTV's Top 5 list of Israeli-made gadgets for you to gift this holiday season. First up on the list is Lishtot Testra Pro. This reusable keychain device will let you know in less than 2 seconds if your tap, bottled, or natural water is safe enough to drink. Using a green or red light, Lishtot, which means to drink in Hebrew, uses patented sensor technology for detecting contaminants such as E. coli, lead, and much more. All of this data can even be Bluetoothed to your Lishtot app so you can compare different water sources. Now, this is a game changer. Second up is Smart Sketch. This smart projector guide helps with step-by-step drawing, learning to write numbers and letters, early spelling skills, and so much more. The gadget can even transfer and project smartphone photos onto the paper ready to be sketched. This gadget is available in major retail stores and has won countless Toy of the Year awards. Absolutely amazing. In third place is Daphne. A father-daughter duo spent 3 years perfecting this patented hairbrush that straightens a full head of hair in less than 5 minutes. Using a flat iron at home damages your hair, and going to the salon can get pretty expensive. And now this at-home ceramic gadget is your go-to. They even were featured in international magazines like Vogue, Glamour, and InStyle. So you better check this out, ladies. It's a lifesaver. Fourth up is the Even ear print technology that's inside the Even wireless headphones, which are labeled to be the glasses for your ears. This technology and headphones analyzes, adjusts, and adapts sound to each ear to provide a full personalized listening experience. This is definitely a gift anyone would be happy to get. Last, but as you know, not least, the Hero Shelf for all you forgetful people like myself. Never lose your keys, glasses, or phone again. The Hero Shelf is meant for you to leave them all on one wall-mounted organizer. This superhero can hold all the objects you need that you tend to leave behind. A true hero. Now that's all for today's Top 5. Back to you.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. This week on ILTV's Top 5, we learned about the best Israeli-made gadgets that are perfect for gifting. So today's word is machshir, meaning device or gadget. If someone is working and you want to know what tool they're using, you might ask, "Eze machshir ze?" or "What device is that?" Or if you go into a store with a job in mind, you could also ask, "Eze machshir?" or "Which gadget is best for the job?" And there are many machshirim or devices to choose from, like electronic devices or machshirim chashmalim, or even a workout device, like a machshir hitamlut. But as you might expect, a machshir is more than just any device or gadget. It can also be a tool or almost any other object with a specified use. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy and cool with a low of 52 or 11 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow is expected to be sunny with slight rise in temperatures to a high of around 65 or 18 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.74 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.